Hey, Tommy from the Run Testers with another running shoe versus. In this video, we are going to be looking at the Asics Novablast 4 and the Nike Invincible 3. Now, Nick received his Asics Novablast 4s from the guys over at Sport Shoes. We're not paid to do this review, so we can say whatever we want, but big thanks to Sport Shoes for getting these so that we can do this versus and some other reviews. If you go into the caption below, you can find a link to the Novablast 4 on the Sport Shoes website. This is an affiliate link, so we do make money out of it if you click on it, so just be aware of that if you decide to buy them. Right, let's dive in and do the versus. The Nike Invincible 3 costs £174.95 or $180. It weighs 299 grams or 10.5 ounces for men in a size 8, and the drop is 9mm. The Asics Novablast 4 costs £135 or $140. It weighs 256 grams or 9 ounces for men in a size 8, and the drop is 8mm. The Invincible line made a big impression when the first version was released, using the same ZoomX foam found in the Vaporfly and Alphalfy, but applying it to a max cushion daily shoe. The third version sees updates across the shoe, including a wider midsole to improve stability, a taller foam stack to increase the cushioning, and a smaller heel clip to provide a better fit. The updated design also makes the shoe slightly heavier than previous versions. The shoe features a durable flying upper that's designed to offer a supportive fit as well as improving ventilation through breathability zones, and there's a new lining underneath the heel to provide a more stable and slightly firmer ride. The Novablast 4 sees some big changes from the previous version. The biggest of those is the new FF Blast Eco Plus foam that aims to provide a softer ride with more energy return when you want to pick up the pace. There's also an updated shoe geometry that combines the trampoline-inspired midsole with a higher stack of midsole foam. There's an engineered woven mesh upper that offers a plush fit as well as plenty of breathability and flexibility, as well as a gusseted tongue to prevent slip. And there's a healthy covering of AHA outsole rubber across the shoe to improve grip and durability.
So when it comes to fit, I ran in a UK 8.5, it's a US 9.5 in both the Asics Novablast and in the Nike Invincible 3. I'd recommend going true to size in both of these shoes. I think the fit is much more dialed in and locked in on the Novablast 4. It's a much more natural fit. I feel that the uppers hold better. There's a lot of slipping for me in the Invincible in the heels. I find it very hard to get that locked down. I feel the back of the shoe slipping away, which doesn't really help with the ride. The Invincible 3 is also arguably a little bit more close fitting across the top of the midfoot. I think the Novablast 4 probably has a little bit more room in the toe box, a bit more wiggle room, particularly clearance across the top of the toe. So if you think about using these for long runs, where you might be on feet for 2 or 3 hours, then that might be a consideration for you. I think the Novablast offers more wiggle room there. But overall, when it comes to fit, I would go true to size in both of these shoes.
When it comes to fit of the two shoes, I've got no complaints of either of them about the length or the room in the toe box you have in both of them. It's my normal running shoe size for both, and they both fit me well around the toes. The Invincible's heel design isn't great though, I think. I haven't had any real problems with heel slippage myself, but it certainly feels looser and less locked in than you have with the Novablast. I think it can be a little bit sloppy around the back of the shoe basically, but the Novablast I had no complaints about at all really on the fit. I would stick to your normal running shoe size in both though, and just be a little bit aware of the heel fit on the Invincible.
So the fit for me in these two shoes, Asics Novablast 4, I found it to be a very comfortable shoe. I would stick to my UK size 8 in this shoe. I'd say that it's a better fit than the previous versions. The earlier Novablasts were a little bit narrow and the upper didn't have a lot of give in it. So if you had wider feet, you might have problems with them. But with these, the upper's a little bit more forgiving and it just feels a little bit roomier in the forefoot. So I stick to my UK size 8 in the Novablast 4s. The Nike Invincible 3, yeah, fits me fine, size 8 UK, no issues at all, very comfortable shoe, nice comfortable upper, a little bit more of a firmer rigid upper, so there's not as much give in it, but I did find there was plenty of room in the forefoot, so I'd stick to my size in both of these shoes.
The Invincible and the Novablast are both shoes that have had probably lovers and haters throughout the various generations of them. They both started out as pretty lively, fairly wobbly shoes. The Novablast in particular I found was a little bit too wobbly very early on for me, and they're both taken steps to kind of address that, but I think the Novablast has done it very successfully over the years, with the Novablast 4 being now a really well-rounded shoe in general, whereas the Invincible 3 just is probably my least favourite of the Invincibles so far, because the bounce and fun of the ride of the shoe has been tamed a little with the third version, and it still is quite unstable. I did find it wobbly at times. If I had any kind of little niggle or something like that, I didn't really feel confident running running in the Invincible, really. Whereas Novablast 4 now feels like a pretty well-rounded, modern daily trainer. It doesn't feel unstable to me anymore. You've got a fairly bouncy midsole foam there. Nothing too exceptionally lively. I think you probably had a bit more bounce with previous models, but I still think it delivers a pretty good ride for a range of runs. Comfortable upper, all round just a really solid shoe. Whereas the Invincible 3, I found probably the least favourite of the versions of the shoe. I feel like the transition is not quite as good on the new shoe. You still get that feeling of sinking into the ZoomX foam here, and it is a bouncy shoe. It's obviously a very bouncy foam. We've seen it on loads of shoes, but just don't feel like you've got the lively transition anymore with the shoe. Maybe it's just too much ground contact, or the weight's gone up a little bit, that kind of thing. And at any kind of pace, it just feels a bit ponderous, a bit wobbly, just not as fun. It's certainly not a very versatile shoe at all. Whereas the previous models of the Invincible, I really liked. Like on certain days, they were my favourite shoes to run in because they were very bouncy, they were very fun, they were reasonably lightweight for such big cushion shoes, and actually you could even use them for slightly faster runs because that ZoomX foam is so bouncy. With the latest version of the shoe, maybe the stability's gone up a little bit. I didn't find it that stable, and what I found basically was that it just wasn't as fun to run in. I think a lot of people will say that about the Novablast 4 as well, maybe compared to previous models it's not quite as fun, but what I do think now you have is a very effective all-round daily trainer. I enjoyed doing a session in this shoe. I enjoyed using it for a long run where I made a bit of an effort up hills, and you can also go down to very easy paces as well. The FF Blast Plus foam you have in the shoe is not as exciting as the ZoomX foam in the Nike, but the overall geometry and setup of the Novablast I think is better. That just creates a lighter, less cumbersome feeling underfoot. The Invincible 3 is just a bit ponderous, and that means Novablast 4 is a far more versatile shoe for sure. But even if you're just looking at them as cushion shoes just for easy runs, I think it's nicer to have the Novablast 4 on your foot because it is still very comfortable. It's got a similarly high stack of cushioning. It just gives you a slightly breezier ride for ticking along at those easy paces. So yeah, all round in my run test, I did prefer using the Novablast 4. The Invincible 3, that wouldn't have necessarily been the case with some past models of the Invincible, but when it comes to Invincible 3, I think it just lacks a little bit of the fun you had with previous versions.
So these two shoes are both shoes that you'll probably look at for daily trading miles, comfortable miles, those sorts of things. But they are quite different shoes in some ways. If you look at them on paper and look at the size of the midsole stack, they're both quite heavily cushioned shoes. So you might look at them in the same way, but I wouldn't buy these shoes for the same purpose because they're slightly different in terms of how you'd use them. The Novablast 4 is, I would say, a big improvement on the previous Novablasts apart from the one. I really liked the Novablast 1. I thought it was a fun, exciting, bouncy, just good shoe for having fun and ticking off daily miles in. Since the Novablast 1, the shoe has changed a little bit. It was a little bit of a wobbly shoe, so Asics has added more stability by making the shoe a bit wider in the later versions of the shoe. By doing that, it's lost a little bit of magic, so it's not as bouncy, it's not as fun to run in, and definitely the Novablast 3, it just didn't really do anything for me. It just felt like a bit of a dull shoe. The Novablast 4 has this new updated foam in it, and it is significantly better than the 3. It's a bit more responsive. It feels like it's a bit more versatile. It feels like there's a little bit more to it. The shoe, the midsole foam compresses nicely and gives you a little bit back. I wouldn't say it's a bouncy shoe, but it's certainly a shoe that you can run at a nice pace at comfortably, and also do those easier pace runs as well because there's quite a lot of midsole stack in this. So I would say that the Novablast 4 is a really nice, solid daily trainer that you can use for easy runs, but you can also do faster training it as well. I have done track in this shoe. It's not great at track. It's not the fastest shoe around, but it's competent. It's a shoe that if you were looking to buy one shoe and you may be a new runner or you're a runner that is not wanting to spend loads of money on shoes, this is a shoe that can tick a lot of those boxes now. And I definitely say that if you're doing a half marathon, a marathon, and you just wanted to buy one pair of shoes, you could comfortably do it in the Novablast 4. It's a nice shoe for that. It definitely feels like it's got a nice rolling action. There's a little bit of a rocker in it. And it's quite nice and lightweight feeling as well when you're running in it. So solid all-round daily shoe for me and big improvement on the previous versions. The Invincible range of shoes is another shoe line that has developed quite a bit since it came about. When the first one came about, it was very exciting. It was the first daily shoe that Nike had added ZoomX foam into, and that was a really interesting prospect because obviously ZoomX foam was used in shoes like the Vaporfly, and it was fantastic at that. It still is fantastic at that. So adding it to a daily shoe was quite interesting because nobody really knew what it was going to do. The first Invincible was great fun. It was just bouncy, it was soft, it was really enjoyable to run in. It was a little bit wobbly, but it was quite wide, so even though it was not that stable, it still had quite a big base on it. Since then, it has lost its magic for me, and what I found with the Invincible is that even though it's got ZoomX foam in it, it's sort of become a bit more rigid and a bit heavier, and it doesn't really deliver the same enjoyment and the same softness and bounce and things like that that you got from that first one. So as a result, the Invincible 3 has really, for me, just become a bit of a workhorse shoe. It's still got a bit of softness in it. It's ZoomX foam. You can still feel it's ZoomX foam, but it doesn't really wow me in any way. I definitely don't take this shoe out and think I'm going to have a great fun run. I just go and tick off the miles, and it doesn't really do a lot. The other thing I'd say about the Invincible 3 is that it's not a versatile shoe. It is firmly sits in that world of easy day runs, general daily miles where you're not running any faster. It can't handle picking up the pace at all. It's not a shoe designed for that. It's just a solid workhorse shoe that's got a little bit of life in that midsole foam. But really, it's not a shoe that I would look at if I was going to do a marathon and I wanted one pair of shoes in it, because I think with this it just feels a little bit sluggish, which is surprising considering it's got ZoomX foam in. Also, it is a lot more stable than the first version, but with that stability also comes a lack of the enjoyment and the bounce and stuff that you got from the first Invincible. So weighing up these two shoes together, I think they are, in some ways they are similar. They've got big stacks in them. They are definitely big cushion shoes, max cushion shoes, but for very different purposes. I think the Novablast 4 is a solid daily shoe that does quite a lot of different types of runs competently, and it's a very nice, enjoyable shoe to run in. The Invincible 3 for me is an expensive shoe, and it's a shoe that doesn't really do a lot. It's a solid daily easy run shoe, but that's about it for me. The other thing I'd say about these shoes is that the outsole on the Invincible 3 is really good. It's got a fantastic layer of outsole rubber on it, solid, no issues at all, very durable, and it needs that because it's got ZoomX foam in it, so it has to have a big layer of rubber on the outside to protect that. The Novablast 4 has a really good outsole as well. There's some updates to this sort of trampoline design since the Novablast 3, and it's fine. I've not had any issues in it at all. It hasn't been slippy for me. I know the Novablast 3 did have a TR version which had a slightly updated outsole for running on lighter trails, because the outsole on the Novablast 3 wasn't particularly great for dealing with trickier surfaces. I've not had any issues with this, but I definitely wouldn't say it's in the same league as the Invincible 3 outsole.
So in testing, I've covered more than 50 Ks in both of these shoes over a similar mix of different paces, durations, and on different terrains. And to be honest, I've never been the biggest fan of either of these models through their earlier generations. But I've definitely enjoyed one of these shoes more than the other, that's for sure, but more on that in a mo. Now, I've also done a side-by-side mile with one shoe on each foot, and this is what I found. So then I've just done a side-by-side mile. I've got the Novablast 4 on my left foot. I've got the Invincible 3 on my right foot. It's actually snowing here, but we don't stop testing for any weather. Major differences between these two shoes. The Novablast 4, it feels lighter, the transitions are smoother. It's a more natural feeling shoe on the foot. I think the uppers hold better. I don't get any slipping in the heels. And the transitions are just much better, smoother than you'll find on the Invincible 3. I've never gotten on with the Invincible 3. This is probably one of the worst shoes I've ever run in. I really just can't get on with it. There's too much shoe, there's too much going on. Weird kind of geometry of the midsole doesn't work for me. I can't get good heel hold, lockdown, there's a lot of slipping. And just as you're landing and sort of through that kind of motion, it just feels like the shoe's slightly disconnected. There's different bits moving in this shoe, and it just feels fussy and odd, and I just can't get used to the sensation of it. These are both big shoes. They're both quite a lot of shoe on the foot. There's a lot going on here. You've obviously got big stacks. They both got that wide 4-foot wide heels to bring some stability. Yeah, so the odd thing here as well, I think despite the fact that the Invincible 3 arguably has more stability elements, it's a shoe that's designed to arguably bring a bit more stability, even though it's got a big stack on it. Because I think the shoe doesn't feel connected from 4-foot to heel as you're rolling through, there's more wobble for me in this shoe. Now, I don't think the Invincible 3 is in any way natural. I think this is a shoe that definitely interferes with my style, at least anyway. It's a shoe that doesn't disappear into the background when you're running. The Novablast 4 does that a lot more. I think it's just a much better shoe than Novablast 4. I think the ride's more lively. This shoe is going to be more versatile. It's a bit more agile. There's a bit more speed in the transition. There's a bit more pop and bounce from the midsole foam. It's just a better shoe all round for me. And that is probably, without wanting to give away my verdict, side by side, this hasn't changed that at all. There's got one shoe on one foot which is big and hulking but feels a bit more natural. I've got another shoe on the right foot, the Invincible 3, which just feels interruptive and weird and odd. I can't get used to the sensation. I don't like the massive geometry of it and the big kind of hexagonal kind of 4-foot spreading yeah, it's not a shoe for me. So yeah, anyway, I'll do the verdict back in the office when it's not snowing and I'm not being attacked by dogs.
So my verdict on these two shoes, I definitely say that the Novablast 4 is a better option all round. I think it can do easy runs. I think it can do daily runs. I think you can tick off a lot of mileage in this at different paces and be very, very happy with it. It's a bit cheaper. It's just better value all round. I think it's a much nicer daily shoe that lots of people will like because you can use it for lots of things. I'd probably say that I'd put this in my rotation as sort of the mid shoe between my easy day shoe and my race shoe as the daily shoe, and it does that really well. I found that I can take the shoe out for most runs and I'm perfectly happy with it, and it just feels really comfortable. Invincible 3 I very rarely use. I've got cushion shoes that I much prefer to use than this, things like the New Balance More V4, and it's just sort of sits in my collection as a shoe that I don't really take out that much. I think if you are a runner that purely wants a really solid easy shoe that has a little bit of life in it compared to some cushion shoes, it's probably a nice option. But for the price, I'd definitely go for the Novablast 4 all the way. I just think it's a much better shoe all around now.
So the verdict is an easy one for me here. I do prefer the Novablast 4 to the Nike Invincible 3. Obviously, Novablast 4 is geared to be that bit more of an all-rounder, a bit more of a daily trainer, which in general is what I tend to prefer for easy days as well. So maybe that's coming to play here a bit with how I feel about the shoes. But even if you're looking at these just as very cushion shoes for easy runs, which is what I would use the Novablast 4 mainly myself as well, I think it's got the more enjoyable ride than the Nike Invincible 3, which has just lost a little bit of the magic that was there with the previous two versions of the shoe, which weren't perfect in any way. They were a bit wobbly to use at times as well, but I think what you have for the 3 is the wobbliness is still kind of there, but the fun has gone a bit, and you've got a slightly worse heel design, which isn't very helpful at all. Whereas Novablast 4 I do like more than the previous versions of Novablast, because I think it's balanced out what the line has been known for throughout the years. It's still pretty lightweight, it's still cushioned and protective, it's got a little bit of the bounce, not maybe as much as previous versions, but it is a more stable, grounded shoe. And the transition I think is really good on the shoe. It rolls through very nicely, whereas I sometimes didn't get that so much even with the Novablast 3. So yeah, all round, Novablast 4 takes the win for me in this comparison.
Verdict then, well, this is a really easy one for me. You might have got a sniff of it in that last bit. The Novablast 4 wins this hands down all day long. It's lighter and it runs that way. It offers better step-in comfort, better fit and security, and a more disappearing feel on the foot. When it comes to the ride, I find the transitions and the energy are better than the Invincible 3. I don't think the Flight Foam Blast Eco Plus foam is necessarily any more springy than the ZoomX foam you'll find in the Invincible, but the return and the roll through in the Novablast 4 is markedly better with the way that I run. That may be due to the weight of the Invincible. It's definitely a lot to do with the heft of the Invincible and that big hexagonal forefoot flaring that almost feels like a braking mechanism to me in that shoe. Now, if you're after an easy day shoe, the Novablast is just as cushioned and protective, but it feels more natural, and I think it also offers more stability. To me, the Nike Invincible 3 is an over-engineered beast. There's just too much going on, and I find it intrudes into my run, almost guiding me out of my natural running gait, but not in a good way. And in terms of slow to marathon pace versatility, I would choose the Novablast 4 every single time, which is really lucky because it's quite a lot cheaper. So the winner here, for me, if it wasn't clear yet up to this point, it's going to be the Asics Novablast 4.
That's it from us on this Versus. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, click the little bell, all those things that make us happy. And if you go into the caption below, you can find a link to the Novablast 4 on Sport Shoes. Thanks a lot for watching. Catch you next time.